Tiger Nico is back in the story, and I sort of feel bad for him to a certain extent. I mean, all he really wanted to do was chill out in a restaurant by himself. He booked it. He basically bought the entire restaurant for himself just to have a good time, enjoy his wine. Man was dripped out and all of that, only to have a sip, just one sip on the wine he ordered that cost a million yen, which is around what? I don't know how much that translates to, but it sounds like a lot of money. Only to get one sip out of it, and that's it. It gets destroyed. That's sad, but it's also incredibly funny. And I think it's kind of interesting that Sandrovich sort of brought Niiko, one of the biggest villains, into the stories like this. I think this is the most chilled we've ever really seen Niiko. Because I think every time we've seen him, he's usually wearing something around his fighting gear or his cloak. And so seeing him just being, or at least trying to be a Giga Chad, flexing his drip and trying to have a good time with his food, this is a very interesting side to Niiko. But all of that is basically ruined because Setsuna and later on we see in the chapter, Aoya are on his case. A lot of people have been wondering what happened with Setsuna because the last time we actually saw Setsuna was like in the inside arc, which happened like a few chapters ago, where he finally found Niiko. And ever since like he basically identified him, we didn't know what was happening from that point on. But it seems as though they were basically stalking Niiko, making sure that they would get him at the perfect time, which just so happened to be the time that Niiko took in this chapter, which was actually happening around the same time Lohan is actually meeting with Oma and Ryuki. And is also around the same time Shen is fighting Kuroki as well. It's around that time. And honestly, I didn't really expect to see a Niiko fight at this point in the story. I thought we were about to wind down, which it doesn't seem to be the case. At least I hope, because Niiko did off-screen Mutemba, which was kind of expected. I would say a lot of people didn't think Mutemba would actually win, but no one expected it to be basically off-screened. And so I hope we get to see this fight, which I'm fairly hopeful that we will end up seeing this fight. I mean, we've seen Shen Wulong fight Kuroki, come on. This fight has to happen, basically. And I guess we'll get to see just how strong Niiko really is, although I think it's going to be a bit harder to gauge, mainly because of the characters involved. Like, for example, right, Setsuna, we know he's fairly powerful, but it's been a few years since we've last seen him. We don't know how strong he really is. Like, is he relative to Oma? Or maybe he's like a tier below him. We do know he's probably stronger than Aoya and Ryuki, but again, there isn't really that consistent scaling for both characters essentially, which brings me to Aoya. Aoya, we do know that his strength has been basically deteriorating over time, but he seems to be geared up. So he's compensating for his lack of skill with his actual, suits that he has on. And so this is a very odd situation that Niiko is in, at least when it comes to the power scaling aspect of it. Even if, like, you could say Niiko were to one-shot Setsuna and Aoya, it wouldn't really mean much, because you would have to argue how strong Setsuna actually is. And to be safe, I think people would lean towards him being about as strong as he was during the Kengan Annihilation tournament, although that's a pretty low bar. But power scaling aside, Aoya is here, and as I said, he looks decked. Bro, he was ready. These people were ready. Like, it looks like an Iron Man suit. That's what it really looks like. It's like, holy shit, they're probably gonna need it. I mean, I think Aoya gets out of this alive. I know there are man, I'm surprised to see so many people that want Aoya to die. Some of y'all have no chill at all. Now, the reason I think Aoya won't die is because there is still that, I'm gonna say it's setup. Yeah, it can qualify as setup, where Aoya said he would probably try to execute justice on Koga. Now, whether he gets to execute justice on Koga, we will get to see. But I think in order for us to actually see that, he needs to survive this encounter somehow. That's why I think Aoya, look, I know some people want this man dead. He's not gonna die. He's not gonna die. I'm more worried about Setsuna, because I don't know if Setsuna will even retreat. I know Aoya, if things get bad, he might probably retreat or something. Maybe Nico ends up being the one that retreats. But Setsuna, he's not right in the head, or at least he isn't, sane. And so I'm a bit worried that he'll try to push too hard, and that might lead to his death, because he doesn't really have that many plot points outside of what's happening with Nico, basically. If he somehow survives this, he'll basically have nothing else to do other than probably try again. And so that's where I'm sort of mixed on how I think this will end. There is the surprise, because now I'm going to have to include surprise factors when it comes to these reviews, because I don't think that this fight will finish, mainly because of what happened with Kuroki and Shen. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of cautious when it comes to these particular fights that seem to be happening outside of the Kengan matches, basically, that aren't 1v1s. And so maybe Nico somehow manages to strike a deal of some sort, although it would take a lot to convince someone like Setsuna, who's hell-bent on killing him. So Nico would have to say something very impressive. But we're in for a fight, hopefully, I pray. I loved this chapter mainly because we got to see Nico after, honestly, he's been around doing next to nothing, and every single time we've almost had the opportunity that, oh, could this be it? Could we see Nico in action? It's always been taken away from us. And so I hope that doesn't happen again. And yeah, after this, I don't know what to expect. Hopefully we get to see what the hell is going on with Koga eventually. But please, let's see this fight first. But yeah, that's it. If you like the review, like, sub, all that fun stuff. And until next time, take it easy.